Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Beneath the Surface. Vincent Morrison had always been a man who observed more than he spoke. At 42, his weathered hands told the story of someone who'd built everything from the ground up, while his steel-gray eyes missed nothing. Most people saw a quiet contractor who ran a modest construction business in suburban Colorado. They had no idea that Vincent Morrison was much more than he appeared. 20 years ago, Vincent had been Vincent Kozlov, a name that carried weight in certain circles of Eastern Europe. He'd spent his youth learning skills that polite society preferred to forget existed, skills that had kept him alive when lesser men died in the shadows of Prague and Budapest. When he'd finally walked away from that life, he'd chosen anonymity in America, a new identity, and the hope of something resembling peace. He'd met Brianna Walsh at a community college where he was taking business courses. She was studying early childhood education, all golden hair and bright smiles, the kind of woman who seemed to glow with an inner light that had been foreign to Vincent's dark world. She represented everything clean and hopeful that he'd never thought he could have. Their son Tyler, now 16, had his mother's easy smile but his father's watchful eyes. Vincent had worked hard to give them a normal life. The suburban house with the white fence, the family vacations, the illusion of ordinary happiness. Brianna worked at a daycare center. Vincent's construction business thrived through word of mouth and meticulous work, and Tyler excelled in both academics and wrestling. But Vincent had always known that peace was temporary. In his experience, betrayal was not a matter of if, but when. The first crack in his carefully constructed world had appeared 6 months ago. Brianna had started working late more often, her phone buzzing with texts that made her smile in ways that had nothing to do with daycare business. She'd become more critical of Vincent, more distant, as if she were building a case against their marriage in her own mind. Her brother Derek had always been a problem. 3 years younger than Brianna, Derek Walsh worked in middle management for a tech company and carried himself like he owned the world. He'd never hidden his disdain for Vincent, making snide comments about blue-collar work and constantly pushing Brianna to aim higher. Derek drove a leased BMW, lived in an overpriced downtown loft, and treated every family gathering like an opportunity to showcase his supposed superiority. What Derek didn't know was that Vincent's construction business was just the visible tip of an iceberg. Through a complex web of shell companies and offshore accounts, Vincent controlled significant real estate holdings across 3 states. He'd learned long ago that appearing smaller than you could be the greatest advantage of all. The family trip to California had been Brianna's idea, a long weekend to visit her cousin Miranda in Los Angeles. Derek had immediately invited himself along, and then things had gotten interesting. When booking flights, Derek had purchased first-class seats for himself and Brianna, while somehow managing to only buy bus tickets for Vincent and Tyler. "Did you expect a private jet?" Brianna had laughed when Vincent questioned the arrangements, her voice carrying a cruel edge he'd never heard before. Derek had smirked from across their kitchen table. "A 12-hour bus ride suits your pay grade, Vince." Vincent had said nothing, had simply nodded and helped Tyler pack for what his son assumed would be a normal family trip. But as he'd watched his wife and her brother head to the airport, leaving him and Tyler to board a Greyhound bus, Vincent Morrison began a plan. The bus ride gave him 12 hours to think, 12 hours to observe Tyler's growing resentment at his mother's behavior, and 12 hours to make some very discreet phone calls to people who owed him favors from his previous life. By the time they reached Los Angeles, Vincent had confirmed what he'd suspected for months. His wife was having an affair, and Derek wasn't just enabling it. He was actively facilitating it. The lover was Lucas Reed, a fitness instructor at an upscale gym where Derek held a membership and had introduced his sister. Lucas was 28, all muscles and charm, exactly the kind of man who specialized in bored housewives with money. What made it worse was the systematic nature of their deception. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a crime of passion. This was calculated, planned, with Derek serving as both enabler and conspirator. They'd been using Derek's downtown loft for their meetings, had even taken a weekend trip to Denver together while Vincent was supposedly working out of town. Tyler had noticed too. Vincent caught his son watching Brianna with growing suspicion during their first day in Los Angeles. Saw the way Tyler's jaw tightened when Derek made another disparaging comment about Vincent's work. "Dad," Tyler had said that evening as they sat by the pool at their budget hotel while Brianna was shopping with Derek, "something's not right." Vincent had looked at his son, really looked at him. Tyler had grown into a young man, while Vincent wasn't paying attention, had developed the kind of quiet intensity that reminded Vincent of himself at that age. "I know, son," Vincent had said simply. That's when Vincent made a decision that would change everything. Tyler was old enough for the truth, old enough to choose sides, and smart enough to be an ally in what was coming next. Chapter 2. The Art of Observation. The second day in Los Angeles, Vincent and Tyler played the role of tourists while conducting surveillance that would have impressed Vincent's former colleagues. They visited the beach, toured Hollywood, ate overpriced food, and documented everything their wife and mother thought she was hiding. Brianna had claimed she was spending the day with her cousin Miranda, shopping and catching up. Derek had said he was meeting old college friends for a golf game. Both lies were easily exposed with patience and the right vantage points. Vincent had taught Tyler how to be invisible in plain sight, how to use reflection in storefront windows to watch without being seen, how to follow without being followed. The boy was a natural, inheriting not just Vincent's observational skills, but his capacity for cold analysis. They watched Brianna meet Lucas Reed at a beachside cafe in Malibu. The personal trainer was exactly what Vincent had expected. Tall, lean, artificially tan, with the kind of practice smile that had probably launched 1,000 affairs. He drove a red Mustang convertible that screamed midlife crisis compensation. "That's him, isn't it?" Tyler had asked, his voice carefully controlled as they observed from across the street. "Yes," Vincent had confirmed, photographing the couple with a telephoto lens as they held hands and shared intimate conversation over lunch. But it was what happened next that truly revealed the scope of the betrayal. Derek had arrived at the cafe an hour later, joining Brianna and Lucas for what was clearly a planning session. Vincent watched through his camera lens as Derek pulled out his laptop, showing them something on the screen that made all three of them smile. Through careful positioning and a directional microphone Heed had shipped to their hotel, Vincent was able to capture fragments of their conversation. They were planning something beyond the affair, something that involved Vincent's construction business, his bank accounts, and what Derek kept calling the exit strategy. "Tyler," Vincent had said quietly as they drove back to their hotel, "how would you feel about spending your senior year living somewhere else?" His son had looked at him with those watchful eyes. "Depends on where and why. Because sometimes when people betray you, the only response is to make sure they can never do it again." Tyler had nodded slowly. "What do you need me to do?" That evening, while Brianna claimed to have a headache and went to bed early, Vincent had made a series of phone calls from the hotel's business center. The first was to his lawyer in Colorado, instructing him to begin certain legal preparations. The second was to his accountant, with very specific instructions about asset protection. The third was to a private investigator named Rodriguez, who specialized in cases involving infidelity and fraud. The fourth call was to a number he hadn't dialed in 15 years. "Dmitri," Vincent had said when the familiar voice answered. "It's Vincent." Vincent Kozlov. The Russian accent was thick with surprise. "I heard you were dead. Vincent Morrison now, and I need a favor. You saved my nephew in Bratislava. Name it. I need someone watched, and I need information. The kind of information that comes from computers and phones. Still making people disappear? Still making people wish they had." By the end of the evening, Vincent had set in motion a plan that would systematically dismantle the lives of everyone who had betrayed him. But first, he needed to return home and let them think they'd won. The next morning brought a surprise that even Vincent hadn't anticipated. Brianna announced that she was extending her stay in Los Angeles for another week. "Miranda really needs me right now," she said, not meeting Vincent's eyes. "She's going through a rough divorce, and I feel like I should be here for her." Derek had nodded supportively. I can stay too. Help coordinate some business meetings out here. Vincent had smiled the understanding smile of a devoted husband. Of course. Tyler and I will head back. You take care of family. As he'd hug his wife goodbye at the airport, Vincent had whispered in her ear, I love you, Brianna. Remember that. She looked puzzled by the comment, but Vincent was already walking away, Tyler at his side, ready to begin the real work. The bus ride home gave Vincent 24 hours to finalize his plans. By the time they reached Colorado, he had identified every weakness in his enemies' lives, every pressure point that could be exploited, every relationship that could be turned into a weapon. Brianna wanted out of their marriage. She'd get out, but she'd leave with nothing, and she'd spend the rest of her life regretting the day she decided to betray Vincent Morrison. Derek thought Vincent was beneath him. He was about to learn exactly what Vincent Morrison was capable of. And Lucas Reed, the pretty boy trainer who thought he could steal another man's wife, he was going to discover that some men's wives came with a price that few were prepared to pay. Chapter 3. Setting the Board. The Morrison house felt different when Vincent and Tyler returned from Los Angeles. Without Brianna's constant chatter and Derek's periodic visits, the silence revealed truths that had been hidden beneath domestic routine. Vincent walked through each room, seeing everything with fresh eyes. The credit card bills Brianna had hidden in her jewelry box, the second cell phone tucked behind books on her nightstand, the receipts for expensive lingerie that she'd never worn for him. Tyler found the laptop she'd forgotten to take, and Vincent spent an hour extracting its contents with software that officially didn't exist. Deleted emails painted a picture of an affair that had been planned for months, complete with discussions about divorce strategy and asset division. Lucas had been coaching both Brianna and Derek on how to maximize her settlement while minimizing Vincent's ability to retain his business and property. They think you're stupid, Tyler observed, reading over his father's shoulder. That's their first mistake, Vincent replied, copying files to encrypted drives. Never let anyone know how much you actually know. The following week, Vincent played the role of the oblivious husband perfectly. He called Brianna every evening, listened to her lies about helping Miranda, sent flowers to Derek's loft where she was actually staying. He even transferred $5,000 to her account when she claimed Miranda needed help with legal fees. Meanwhile, Rodriguez's investigation was providing a wealth of information about Lucas Reed. The personal trainer was drowning in debt, student loans, credit cards, a car lease he couldn't afford, and rent on a Venice Beach apartment that was bleeding him dry. He'd been targeting wealthy women for 2 years, with Brianna being his latest and most promising prospect. Derek's finances were equally precarious. His middle management salary barely covered his expensive lifestyle, and he'd been dipping into company funds to maintain appearances. The BMW was 3 months behind on payments, his loft was leveraged to the maximum, and he'd recently been passed over for a promotion that would have solved his money problems. Both men were desperate, which made them predictable. Vincent's plan began with a simple real estate transaction. Through one of his shell companies, he purchased the building that housed Derek's tech company. The previous owner had been quietly struggling with property taxes and maintenance costs, making Vincent's cash offer impossible to refuse. Derek's company had a 5-year lease with 3 years remaining, but Vincent discovered that the lease contained several overlooked clauses that could be triggered under the right circumstances. Within days of taking ownership, Vincent's property management company began documenting every minor lease violation, every instance of improper usage, every technical breach of the building's regulations. Simultaneously, Vincent made contact with Derek's employer through a consulting contract. Morrison Construction had been hired to evaluate the building's structural integrity and recommend necessary upgrades. Vincent's report, submitted with impressive technical detail and photographic evidence, identified serious safety concerns that would require immediate attention and significant financial investment. The company's executives found themselves facing a choice: spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on building upgrades or relocate their offices within 60 days. With their lease now in jeopardy due to Vincent's documented violations and facing the prospect of expensive building improvements, they chose to relocate. Derek Walsh, whose departmental budget had already been strained by his embezzlement, found himself blamed for the company's sudden facility crisis. The timing couldn't have been worse. His financial irregularities had begun attracting attention from the accounting department, just as his value to the company was being questioned. In Los Angeles, Lucas Reed was discovering that several of his wealthy clients had mysteriously canceled their training sessions. Vincent's network had made discreet contact with these women, sharing carefully edited information about Lucas's pattern of targeting married clients for affairs. The fitness instructor's income dropped by 60% in 2 weeks. But Vincent's masterstroke was still to come. Through Dimitri's technological expertise, Vincent gained access to every digital device owned by his targets. He could read their texts, emails, and private messages. He could track their locations, monitor their calls, and most importantly, he could manipulate their communications. The trap was set when Vincent orchestrated a 3-way betrayal that would destroy all of them simultaneously. Using Derek's laptop, Vincent sent emails to Lucas's other female clients, detailing the trainer's relationship with Brianna and warning them about his pattern of seducing married women. The emails appeared to come from Derek's account, making it seem like Brianna's own brother was sabotaging her affair. At the same time, Vincent used Lucas's phone to send text messages to Derek, thanking him for introducing Lucas to his desperate sister and bragging about how easy it had been to manipulate both Brianna and Derek into funding Lucas's lifestyle. Finally, Vincent sent messages from Brianna's hidden phone to Derek's company executives, using information only Derek could have provided to outline the building's lease problems and suggesting that Derek had been planning this crisis to cover his own financial mismanagement. Within 24 hours, all 3 conspirators were turning on each other with vicious efficiency. Derek accused Lucas of using him to get to Brianna and then betraying him to save his own failing business. Lucas accused Derek of setting him up to take the fall for Derek's embezzlement. Brianna accused both men of using her as a pawn in their schemes. Their alliance crumbled as quickly as it had formed, but the damage was already done. Derek's company fired him and referred his case to prosecutors. Lucas lost his remaining clients and faced eviction from his apartment. Brianna found herself stranded in Los Angeles with no money, no allies, and no way home except to call the husband she'd been planning to divorce. Vincent answered her call on the first ring. "Vincent, I need help," she said, her voice small and broken. "Everything's falling apart here, and I don't know what to do." "Of course, sweetheart," Vincent replied, his voice warm with false concern. "Come home. We'll figure this out together." As he hung up the phone, Tyler looked at his father with something approaching awe. "That's just the beginning," Vincent said quietly. "They wanted to destroy our family for money. Now I'm going to show them what real destruction looks like." Chapter 4. The Return. Brianna's flight landed on a cold Thursday evening in early November. Vincent met her at the airport alone, playing the role of concerned husband with practiced perfection. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the collapse of her carefully planned escape from their marriage. Her designer clothes, purchased with money she'd stolen from their joint account, seemed to hang on her frame like costume pieces from a play that had closed unexpectedly. "Thank you for coming to get me," she said as they drove home through the mountain darkness. "I know things have been complicated lately." Vincent reached over and squeezed her hand, the gesture automatic after 20 years of marriage. "You're my wife, Brianna. Whatever's wrong, we'll fix it." She began to cry then, tears that might have been genuine remorse or simple fear at finding herself trapped. Vincent didn't particularly care which. He let her talk through her sobs, spinning a story about how Derek had gotten involved with bad people and how she'd just been trying to help her brother. Lucas Reed had somehow convinced Derek that Vincent was hiding money, that their marriage was failing anyway, that maybe everyone would be better off if things just ended differently. "I never meant for it to go this far," she whispered as they pulled into their driveway. "I know I made mistakes, but I never meant to hurt you or Tyler." Vincent helped her with her bags, noting that she'd brought back considerably less than she'd taken to Los Angeles. "Where's your brother now?" "I don't know. He won't return my calls. The police want to talk to him about something at his work, and his apartment complex says he hasn't been home in days." She paused at their front door, seeming to steel herself. Vincent, there's something else. Derek borrowed money from some people, and they think I know where he is. This was news to Vincent, though he was careful not to show surprise. Derek's disappearance wasn't part of his plan, which meant his former brother-in-law had escalated the situation beyond simple embezzlement. Tyler greeted his mother with polite distance, accepting her hug but not returning it with any warmth. Over dinner, Vincent watched his son process the subtle lies and half-truths in Brianna's story. Tyler had inherited his father's ability to read people. It was clear he saw through his mother's performance. That night, after Brianna had gone to bed claiming exhaustion, Vincent made a series of phone calls. Rodriguez's investigation revealed that Derek had indeed borrowed money from a loan shark named Bobby Torino, using his sister's affair as collateral. Derek had promised Torino that Brianna would divorce Vincent and split the construction business's assets, with Derek taking a percentage to pay off his debts. When Derek's embezzlement had been discovered and his employment terminated, he'd panicked and tried to disappear. But Torino wasn't the kind of creditor who accepted defaults gracefully. "Dad," Tyler said, appearing in the doorway of Vincent's study. "Are we in danger?" Vincent looked at his son, really looked at him. Tyler was 16 now, old enough for truth, old enough to make decisions about loyalty and family. "Possibly. How do you feel about your mother?" Tyler considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "I love her because she's my mom, but I don't trust her anymore, and I don't like who she's become. And if I told you that everything falling apart around us was connected to choices she made with her brother, I'd ask what you need me to do to protect our family." Vincent smiled, recognizing his own ruthless clarity in his son's response. "Pack a bag. Tomorrow, you're going to stay with your Aunt Patricia in Denver for a few weeks. What about school? Your aunt can arrange a transfer to a private school there. Your grades are good enough." Tyler nodded, understanding that this wasn't a discussion but a directive. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to fix this problem permanently." The next morning, Vincent drove Tyler to Denver personally, using the 3-hour trip to explain some truths about their family that he'd hoped never to share. He told Tyler about his past, about the skills he'd learned and the life he'd lived before becoming a Colorado contractor. He explained why they'd always had more money than his business should have generated, why Vincent spoke 4 languages fluently, why he taught Tyler to fight and shoot and think strategically. "Your mother fell in love with the man I pretended to be," Vincent said as they reached Patricia's house. "She never wanted to know who I really was. That was her choice." Patricia Morrison was Vincent's younger sister, the only family member who knew about Vincent's previous life. She'd moved to America 5 years after Vincent, had married a Denver police detective, and had built a legitimate life while maintaining contact with her brother's shadow world. "How bad is it?" Patricia asked as Tyler carried his bags to the guest room. "Bad enough that I need Tyler somewhere safe while I handle it." "And Brianna?" "Brianna made her choice when she decided to betray our family for money." Patricia nodded grimly. She'd never liked Vincent's wife, had always sensed something shallow and opportunistic beneath Brianna's cheerful exterior. "How long do you need?" 2 weeks. Maybe 3. Tyler's a good kid. He'll be fine here." When Vincent returned home that evening, he found Brianna pacing the kitchen with nervous energy. She'd received 2 phone calls during the day, one from a man who claimed Derek owed him money, and another from Lucas Reed begging her to call him back. "Vincent, I'm scared," she said, rushing into his arms. "These people think I have Derek's money, but I don't have anything. And Lucas keeps calling, saying we need to talk, but I don't want to talk to him." Vincent held his wife, smelling another man's cologne faintly in her hair, feeling the tension in her body that came from living a lie for months. "It's going to be okay," he said softly. "I'll take care of everything." That night, as Brianna slept fitfully beside him, Vincent finalized his plan. He would eliminate every threat to his family, settle every debt, and close every door that could lead back to the peaceful life he'd tried to build. But this time, when the smoke cleared, Brianna wouldn't be part of that life. She'd chosen her side when she decided to betray him. Now she would live with the consequences. Chapter 5. Debts and Payments. Bobby Torino operated out of a strip club called Paradise Lost on the industrial side of Denver, surrounded by warehouses and auto repair shops that asked no questions about late-night visitors. Vincent had done business with men like Torino before, predators who fed on desperation and enforced their agreements with violence. Vincent arrived at the club on a cold Friday night, alone and apparently unarmed. He dressed like the construction worker he appeared to be. Work boots, jeans, a heavy jacket that concealed more than it revealed. The bouncer at the door was the size of a small building, all muscle and prison tattoos, designed to intimidate exactly the kind of desperate debtors who usually came looking for Torino. "I need to see Bobby," Vincent told the bouncer calmly. "Bobby don't see nobody without an appointment." Vincent pulled out a photograph of Derek Walsh and placed it on the small table beside the door. "Tell Bobby that Derek Walsh's brother-in-law wants to discuss debt consolidation." 10 minutes later, Vincent was sitting across from Bobby Torino in an office that reeked of cigarettes and cheap cologne. Torino was a small man trying to look big, wearing an expensive suit that couldn't disguise his nervous energy. He had the pale, twitchy appearance of someone who lived entirely at night. "So you're Walsh's brother-in-law," Torino said, lighting a cigarette despite the no-smoking sign on his own wall. "You know where that piece of shit is hiding?" "Derek's dead," Vincent said matter-of-factly. Torino paused with the cigarette halfway to his lips. "Dead how?" "The kind of dead that happens when someone borrows money from the wrong people and then tries to disappear." Vincent leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. "The question is whether you want to write off his debt or transfer it to his family." "Family meaning you?" "Family meaning his sister. My wife." Torino's eyes narrowed as he processed this information. "Your wife was part of Derek's plan. She was going to divorce you, split your assets, pay off Derek's debt with her settlement. That's what Derek told you. The reality is more complicated." Vincent reached into his jacket, moving slowly so the bouncer standing behind him wouldn't get nervous, and pulled out a manila envelope. Inside were photographs. Derek's body in what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse, Lucas Reed bound and gagged in the trunk of a car, and several shots of Brianna meeting with both men over the past months. "My wife thought she was having an affair," Vincent said as Torino examined the photos. What she was actually doing was providing information that Derek and his friend could use to plan a robbery. They were going to wait until she filed for divorce, then break into my house while I was supposedly at work, steal everything valuable, and disappear. Brianna was going to claim she was attacked during the robbery, file for an emergency restraining order, and take half my assets as her settlement. None of this was true, but Vincent had learned long ago that the best lies were built on foundations that people wanted to believe. Torino stubbed out his cigarette. "So where does that leave me?" "It leaves you with a choice. You can pursue Derek's debt through his sister, which means dealing with police investigations, insurance claims, and a lot of attention you probably don't want. Or you can accept Derek's debt as payment for a different service." "What kind of service?" Vincent pulled out a second envelope, this one containing $15,000 in cash. "The kind where Derek Walsh and Lucas Reed disappear permanently, and my wife learns what happens to people who betray their families." Torino counted the money slowly, his mind clearly working through the possibilities. "Your wife, she part of this conspiracy or just stupid?" "Does it matter?" "Might matter to her." Vincent smiled, and something in that expression made even the large bouncer shift uncomfortably. "Bobby, I didn't come here to save my wife. I came here to make sure that everyone who tried to destroy my family pays the appropriate price. And if I say no, then you'll be explaining to the police why Derek Walsh borrowed money from you using his sister's marriage as collateral, and how that led to a complex fraud scheme that resulted in multiple deaths." Vincent stood up, leaving the money on Torino's desk. "But if you say yes, Derek's debt gets paid, 2 problems disappear, and you never have to worry about any of this again." Torino was quiet for a long moment, calculating risks and benefits with the cold precision of a man who'd survived by making brutal decisions quickly. "I'll need proof that it's finished." "You'll have it." "And the woman?" "The woman is my problem." Vincent left the strip club with Bobby Torino's agreement and a timeline. Derek and Lucas would disappear within 72 hours, and Brianna would receive a very personal education about the consequences of betrayal. Driving home through the mountain darkness, Vincent called Rodriguez with specific instructions. The private investigator had been monitoring Brianna's communications since her return from Los Angeles, and the intercepts revealed that she was still planning to proceed with the divorce despite Derek's disappearance. She'd been in contact with a divorce attorney, had opened a separate bank account, and had been secretly photographing and documenting Vincent's possessions for asset division. Even with her brother missing and her lover facing financial ruin, Brianna was still convinced she could somehow salvage her escape plan. That night, Vincent watched his wife sleep and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. She'd had multiple opportunities to confess, to choose her family over her conspiracy, to show even a moment of genuine remorse. Instead, she doubled down on her deception, assuming that Vincent was too naive or too weak to discover the truth. In 72 hours, Derek Walsh and Lucas Reed would cease to exist as problems in Vincent's life. But Brianna's education would take longer, would be more personal, and would serve as a permanent reminder of what happened to people who mistook Vincent Morrison's patience for weakness. She'd wanted excitement, drama, and financial security. Vincent was going to give her exactly what she'd asked for. Chapter 6. The education begins. Brianna woke up Saturday morning to find Vincent making breakfast in their kitchen, humming softly as he prepared her favorite meal, blueberry pancakes with real maple syrup and fresh coffee. He was dressed casually in jeans and a flannel shirt, looking every inch the devoted husband she'd spent months convincing herself she needed to escape. "This is nice," she said, sliding into her chair at the kitchen table. "What's the occasion? Can't a man make breakfast for his wife without an occasion?" Vincent replied, setting a perfect plate in front of her. As they ate, Vincent played the role of concerned spouse flawlessly. He asked about her nightmares, sympathized with her stress about Derek's situation, and suggested they take a weekend trip to help her relax. "Maybe we could drive up to that bed and breakfast in Aspen," he said. "The one where we stayed for our anniversary 3 years ago." Brianna's face brightened at the suggestion. Though Vincent noticed, she immediately began calculating how a romantic weekend might affect her exit strategy. "That sounds wonderful," she said. "But with everything going on with Derek and these scary phone calls—" "I've taken care of the phone calls," Vincent said simply. Something in his tone made Brianna look at him more carefully. "What do you mean, taken care of?" "I mean, I had a conversation with the people Derek owed money to. They understand the situation now." "Vincent, you didn't pay his debts, did you?" "Because we can't afford." "I didn't pay his debts." Vincent reached across the table and took her hand, his grip gentle but somehow final. "Brianna, there's something we need to discuss. About Derek, about Lucas Reed, about the choices you've been making." The color drained from Brianna's face. "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do." For a moment, they sat in perfect silence, the weight of 20 years of marriage balanced against months of deception. Vincent watched his wife's mind work, saw her consider and discard various lies, various deflections, various attempts to maintain the fiction that had already crumbled. "How long have you known?" she asked finally. "Since before Los Angeles." "And you said nothing?" "I wanted to see how far you would go." Brianna pulled her hand away from his, her breakfast forgotten. "So you set us up? You let me think I was getting away with it just so you could humiliate me?" Vincent smiled, and Brianna felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain weather. "Humiliate you?" "Brianna, if I wanted to humiliate you, I would have confronted you in front of Derek and your lover. I would have exposed your affair to your family, your friends, your coworkers. I would have made sure everyone knew exactly what kind of woman you really are. Then what do you want?" "I want you to understand the consequences of betrayal." Vincent stood up and walked to the kitchen counter, where he'd left a manila envelope. When he returned to the table, he spread its contents in front of his wife like cards from a very deadly deck. Photographs. Brianna entering Derek's loft building. Brianna kissing Lucas Reed in restaurant parking lots. Text message printouts planning Vincent's financial destruction. Bank records showing money she'd stolen from their joint accounts. Email exchanges discussing divorce strategy and asset concealment. 20 years of marriage, Vincent said conversationally. 20 years of building a life together, raising our son, creating something that mattered. And you threw it all away for a personal trainer with a drug problem and a brother who sees you as a meal ticket. Brianna stared at the evidence of her betrayal spread across their breakfast table. Lucas doesn't have a drug problem. Lucas Reed has been using cocaine to maintain his energy for training sessions since he started working at that gym. The debt he's accumulated isn't just from poor financial planning. It's from feeding an addiction that costs him $3,000 a month. That's not. Derek never said. Derek has been planning to disappear with your divorce settlement since this whole thing started. He never intended to stay around and help you rebuild your life. He was going to take his cut and vanish, leaving you to explain to everyone why your marriage fell apart. Vincent watched his wife process these revelations, watched her carefully constructed fantasy collapse as she realized how thoroughly she'd been manipulated by the men she'd trusted over her husband. But none of that matters now, Vincent continued, because Derek and Lucas are no longer part of this equation. What do you mean? I mean they've been removed from the situation. Brianna's eyes widened as the implications of Vincent's words sank in. Vincent, what did you do? I solved the problem. Oh God. Oh God. Vincent, please tell me you didn't. Didn't what, Brianna? Didn't protect our family? Didn't eliminate the threats to our son's future? Didn't handle the situation like a man instead of the victim? Vincent leaned back in his chair, completely calm as his wife began to hyperventilate. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to pack a suitcase with enough clothes for a week. You're going to drive to Denver and check into the Marriott downtown using the reservation I've already made. You're going to stay there until I call you. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what happened to my brother. Vincent's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the atmosphere of the room, something that made Brianna's survival instinct scream warnings she was only now learning to hear. Your brother tried to destroy our family for money, Vincent said quietly. Your lover participated in a conspiracy to defraud me and leave me broken. You facilitated their plans and betrayed 20 years of marriage and trust. The question isn't what happened to them. The question is what's going to happen to you. Brianna stood up so quickly that her chair fell over. I'm calling the police. And telling them what? That your husband discovered your affair and your conspiracy to defraud him? That the men you were working with have disappeared and you're worried about your own safety? Vincent shook his head. Go ahead, Brianna. Call them. Explain to the investigating officers why you opened a secret bank account, why you've been photographing our possessions, why you hired a divorce attorney while lying to me about working late. She reached for her phone, then stopped as the full scope of her situation became clear. Any investigation would expose her own crimes, her own betrayals, her own carefully laid plans to destroy her husband financially. Pack your bag, Vincent said again. Go to Denver. Wait for my call. And Brianna, she looked at him through tears that contained more fear than grief. Start thinking about what kind of life you want to have when this is over. Because the life you had, the life you threw away for excitement and money, is gone forever. Chapter 7. Closing Circles. The Denver Marriott was exactly the kind of impersonal corporate hotel where someone could disappear without being memorable. Brianna checked in using the reservation Vincent had made, her hands shaking as she signed the registration card. The desk clerk was professionally cheerful, the kind of person trained to notice nothing unusual about guests who paid in cash and seemed reluctant to make eye contact. Room 847 was on the 8th floor, with a view of the mountains that might have been beautiful under different circumstances. Brianna sat on the bed and stared at her phone, trying to decide who she could call for help. Her parents lived in Florida and wouldn't understand the situation. Her cousin Miranda in Los Angeles was dealing with her own divorce crisis. Derek wasn't answering his phone, and she was beginning to accept that he might never answer it again. Lucas was her last hope. Despite everything Vincent had said about drug problems and hidden agendas, Lucas had seemed to genuinely care about her. Maybe he could help her figure out what to do, how to get away from whatever Vincent was planning. She dialed his number and waited through 4 rings before his voicemail picked up. Lucas, it's me. I'm in trouble, and I need to talk to you. I'm at the Marriott downtown in Denver, room 847. Please call me back. She tried calling him 6 more times over the next 2 hours, leaving increasingly desperate messages. By evening, she was pacing the small hotel room like a caged animal, jumping at every sound in the hallway, convinced that Vincent was going to appear at her door at any moment. The knock came at 9:17 p.m. Brianna froze, staring at the door as if it might explode. "Who is it?" "Hotel management, ma'am. We need to speak with you about your reservation." She approached the door cautiously and looked through the peephole. A man in a hotel uniform stood in the hallway, holding what appeared to be paperwork. He was alone, middle-aged, with the tired expression of someone working a late shift. Brianna opened the door with the chain still attached. "What's the problem?" "Ma'am, there's been an issue with the credit card used to secure your reservation. We need to verify some information. My husband paid for the room in advance." "Yes, ma'am, but the card was flagged by our fraud prevention system. If you could just step out here for a moment so we can verify your identity." Something about the request triggered Brianna's paranoia. "I'm not coming out there. You can verify whatever you need to verify right here." The man nodded understandingly. "Of course, ma'am. Let me just get the manager." He walked away down the hallway, and Brianna closed the door, her heart pounding. Something was wrong. Everything about this situation felt wrong. Her phone rang, and she grabbed it without looking at the caller ID. "Hello, Brianna." Vincent's voice was calm, almost gentle. "How are you settling in?" "Vincent, something's happening here. Hotel management is asking questions about the reservation, and I know. The man in the hallway isn't hotel management." Brianna's blood turned to ice. "What?" "His name is Tony Castellano. He works for the people Derek owed money to. They want to have a conversation with you about your brother's debts." "You set this up. I told you that I solved the problem with Derek's creditors. I never said the solution wouldn't involve you." Brianna sank onto the bed, the phone trembling in her hand. "Vincent, please. I know I made mistakes, but I'm your wife. We can work this out." "Brianna, you stopped being my wife the day you decided to betray our family. What you're now is a loose end that needs to be tied up. What do you want from me?" "I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to experience what it feels like to be powerless, to be betrayed by people you trusted, to have your carefully laid plans destroyed by forces beyond your control." The knock came again, more insistent this time. "Vincent, don't do this. Whatever you're planning, don't do this. Open the door, Brianna." "No, open the door, or Tony will open it for you." Brianna looked around the hotel room desperately, searching for options that didn't exist. The windows didn't open. There was no fire escape, no way out except through the door where Tony Castellano was waiting. "What's going to happen to me?" "That depends on you. Tony and his associates are going to ask you questions about Derek's activities, about money he might have hidden, about people he might have contacted. Answer their questions honestly, and you'll have the chance to rebuild your life somewhere else." "And if I don't?" Vincent was quiet for a long moment. "Brianna, I spent the first 20 years of my life learning how to make people disappear. I spent the last 20 years trying to forget those skills. Don't make me remember them." The line went dead. Brianna stared at the phone, then at the door, then at the window that showed the lights of Denver 8 floors below. She thought about Tyler, about the son who had looked at her with growing disappointment as her deceptions became obvious. She thought about the life she'd had and the life she'd thrown away for the promise of excitement and easy money. The knock came a third time, followed by a voice that was no longer pretending to be polite. "Mrs. Morrison, we need to talk." Brianna walked to the door and turned the deadbolt. Whatever was about to happen, whatever Vincent had arranged for her, she would face it with whatever dignity she had left. As she opened the door, her last coherent thought was a memory of Vincent making blueberry pancakes that morning, humming softly in their kitchen, looking like the devoted husband she decided wasn't enough for her anymore. Chapter 8. The Weight of Truth. 3 days later, Vincent received a phone call from the Denver Police Department. Brianna Morrison had been found in a parking garage downtown, beaten and unconscious, her purse and identification missing. She was in the hospital with a concussion, 3 broken ribs, and no memory of how she'd gotten there. Vincent played the role of concerned husband perfectly, rushing to the hospital with flowers and terror in his voice. He held Brianna's hand as she drifted in and out of consciousness, whispered reassurances about her recovery, and answered the police detective's questions with exactly the right mixture of confusion and worry. She'd been receiving threatening phone calls about her brother. Vincent explained to Detective Morrison. No relation, despite the name. Derek got involved with some bad people, borrowed money he couldn't pay back. Brianna was scared they might come after family members. Any idea where your brother-in-law might be now? Derek disappeared 2 weeks ago. Brianna tried to help him, but Vincent shrugged helplessly. Derek always made poor choices. When Brianna was finally conscious enough to speak coherently, her story was fragmentary and confused. She remembered checking into the hotel, remembered phone calls, remembered being afraid. But the details were hazy, possibly due to the head injury, possibly due to trauma, possibly due to medications. I think someone was trying to get information about Derek, she told the detective weakly. They kept asking where he was, what he'd done with the money. What money? I don't know. I kept telling them I didn't know anything, but they didn't believe me. Vincent squeezed her hand supportively. The important thing is that you're alive, he said. Everything else can be figured out later. Over the following week, as Brianna recovered in the hospital, Vincent began implementing the final phase of his plan. Rodriguez's investigation had uncovered the full scope of Brianna's betrayal. Not just the affair and the planned divorce fraud, but also a systematic theft of money from their joint accounts over 6 months, forged signatures on business loans, and an attempt to secretly sell Vincent's truck and construction equipment. With this evidence, Vincent's attorney filed for divorce on grounds of adultery and fraud, seeking emergency injunctions to freeze Brianna's accounts and prevent her from disposing of any marital assets. The filing included photographs, bank records, text messages, and a detailed timeline of Brianna's criminal activity. By the time Brianna was released from the hospital, she found herself facing not only criminal charges for theft and fraud, but also a divorce proceeding where Vincent was seeking full custody of Tyler and exclusive ownership of all marital property. I don't understand, she said when Vincent visited her at the small apartment she'd been forced to rent with the few $100s left in her personal account. I thought we were going to try to work things out. Vincent looked around the shabby one-bedroom apartment, peeling wallpaper, threadbare carpet, the kind of place where people landed when their lives fell apart completely. Brianna, you tried to steal $47,000 from our joint accounts. You forged my signature on loan documents. You were planning to disappear with Derek and your lover after bankrupting me and destroying Tyler's future. That's not. I never actually took any money. You transferred money to accounts Derek controlled. You used our credit cards to fund your affair. You hired a divorce attorney with money stolen from our son's college fund. Vincent sat down across from her on a couch that looked like it had been salvaged from a garage sale. But none of that is why I'm here. Then why are you here? To give you a choice. Vincent pulled out a legal document and placed it on the coffee table between them. This is a confession detailing your involvement in Derek's embezzlement scheme, your affair with Lucas Reed, and your plan to defraud me through divorce proceedings. Sign it, and I'll make sure the criminal charges against you are reduced to misdemeanors. You'll serve 6 months in county jail, followed by 3 years probation. And if I don't sign, then you'll go to trial for felony fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. With Derek missing and Lucas facing his own criminal charges, you'll be the only defendant left to blame for everything that went wrong. Brianna read through the confession slowly, her face growing paler with each paragraph. This makes it sound like I planned everything. Didn't you? No. Derek came to me with the idea. He said you were hiding money, that you've been lying to me about our finances for years. He said Lucas could help me figure out if I'd be better off divorced. And you believed him. He's my brother. Your brother was planning to disappear with your divorce settlement and leave you holding the bag for his debts. Vincent leaned forward, his voice gentle but implacable. Brianna, Derek used you. Lucas used you. They saw a naive woman who was dissatisfied with her marriage, and they fed you exactly the story you wanted to hear. That's not true. Lucas Reed was arrested yesterday in Las Vegas, trying to board a plane to Mexico with $50,000 in cash and a fake passport. When the DEA searched his apartment, They found enough cocaine to supply a small nightclub and evidence that he'd been running the same con on married women for 3 years. Brianna stared at the confession, tears streaming down her face. What about Derek? Derek Walsh is gone. The people he owed money to have written off his debt as a business loss. Gone where? Vincent looked at his wife, his soon-to-be ex-wife, with something that might have been pity. Brianna, there are consequences for betraying the wrong people. Derek learned that lesson the hard way. She signed the confession with shaking hands, her signature weak and barely legible. As Vincent folded the document and put it back in his jacket, Brianna made one last desperate attempt to salvage something from the wreckage of her life. What about Tyler? He's my son, too. Tyler made his choice when he saw who you really were. He's staying with my sister until this is resolved. And after I serve my time, can I see him? Vincent stood up, straightening his jacket with the careful precision of a man who had just finished a long and complicated job. Tyler is 16 years old, Brianna. In 2 years, he'll be an adult who can make his own decisions about relationships. If you can rebuild your life into something worth respecting, maybe he'll choose to have a relationship with you. And us? Is there any chance for us? Vincent looked at the woman he'd spent 20 years loving, the woman who had carried his child and shared his bed and promised to stand by him through whatever came. He saw a stranger now, someone whose greed and selfishness had destroyed everything they'd built together. No, he said simply. There's no chance for us. As he walked toward the door, Brianna called after him one last time. Vincent, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I'm truly sorry. He paused with his hand on the doorknob, not turning around. Brianna, if you had come to me 6 months ago and said you were unhappy, that you needed something different from our marriage, I would have done everything in my power to fix it. If you had told me you'd made a mistake with another man, I would have forgiven you and worked to rebuild our trust. Then why? But you didn't choose honesty or forgiveness or second chances. You chose deception and theft and conspiracy. You chose to treat me like an enemy to be destroyed rather than a husband to be trusted. Vincent opened the door, letting in the cold mountain air. Actions have consequences, Brianna. This is yours. Chapter 9. The Price of Peace. 6 months later, Vincent Morrison stood in the kitchen of his newly renovated house, making blueberry pancakes for one. The house felt different now. Cleaner somehow, lighter, as if removing the rot of deception had allowed the space to breathe again. Through the window, he could see the Rocky Mountains in the distance, their peaks white with early spring snow. Tyler had returned from Denver the week before, taller and more serious than when he'd left. The private school had challenged him academically, and living with Patricia had taught him things about family loyalty that couldn't be learned from textbooks. He'd visited Brianna twice during her incarceration, brief meetings in the county jail that had convinced both of them that some relationships couldn't survive certain betrayals. She looks older, Tyler had told Vincent after the second visit. Like she finally understands what she lost. Understanding and accepting are different things, Vincent had replied. Understanding is intellectual. Acceptance is emotional. Most people never manage both. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks earlier, with Brianna receiving exactly what she'd brought into the marriage 20 years ago. Nothing. Her conviction for fraud had voided any claim to marital assets, and Vincent's evidence of her systematic theft had been so comprehensive that her public defender had advised her to accept the plea bargain rather than risk additional charges. Lucas Reed had been sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for drug trafficking and fraud. The cocaine found in his apartment had elevated his case from simple theft to narcotics distribution, and his pattern of targeting married women had attracted the attention of federal prosecutors looking to make examples of predatory criminals. Derek Walsh remained missing, though Vincent occasionally received reports from Rodriguez about sightings in Central America, where men with questionable pasts and cash to spend could disappear into communities that asked no questions about previous lives. Vincent's construction business had grown significantly over the past year, as word spread about his company's reliability and attention to detail. He'd hired 3 new employees and was considering expansion into commercial renovation projects. The legitimate income provided perfect cover for his other holdings, which had also grown through careful investment and strategic property acquisitions. Tyler knocked on the kitchen door frame, already dressed for school in jeans and a sweater that Patricia had bought him in Denver. "Morning, Dad." "Morning. Hungry." "Always." They ate breakfast in comfortable silence, the easy quiet of two people who understood each other completely. Tyler had inherited his father's ability to see through surface appearances to underlying truths, but he'd also developed his own moral code that was less ruthless than Vincent's and more forgiving than seemed practical. "I've been thinking about Mom," Tyler said as he finished his pancakes. "And I don't think I want to see her again. At least not for a while." Vincent nodded, unsurprised by his son's decision. "Any particular reason?" "She keeps asking me to convince you to give her another chance. She doesn't seem to understand that this isn't about forgiveness or second chances anymore. It's about consequences. She lost the right to ask for chances when she chose to plan my destruction instead of working on our problems." Tyler was quiet for a moment, processing his father's words with the careful consideration of someone who'd seen the price of poor choices. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you ever regret how you handled this? I mean, what happened to Uncle Derek and Lucas?" Vincent looked at his son, really looked at him, seeing the young man who was emerging from the boy who'd boarded a bus in Los Angeles 6 months earlier. Tyler was asking the question that Vincent had been expecting, the question that would determine what kind of relationship they would have going forward. "Tyler, your mother and her conspirators weren't planning to just divorce me and take half our assets. They were planning to destroy me completely, financially, emotionally, socially. Derek had researched ways to frame me for domestic violence, to make it look like I was hiding money offshore, to ensure that I lost custody of you and ended up with nothing. I know that. Lucas Reed wasn't just some personal trainer who fell for a married woman. He was a predator who specialized in targeting wives whose husbands had money. He'd done this before, multiple times, working with accomplices like Derek to systematically destroy families for profit." Tyler nodded slowly. "So you did what you had to do to protect us." "I did what I had to do to ensure that they could never threaten our family again." Vincent reached across the table and placed his hand over his son's. "But I want you to understand something important. The skills I used, the connections I called upon, the methods I employed, those are tools from a life I left behind for good reasons. I used them this time because our family was under attack, and there was no other way to protect what mattered most to me." "Which is what?" "You. Your future. The life we've built together that's honest and peaceful and everything I never thought I could have." Tyler squeezed his father's hand. "I understand, Dad, and I'm glad you protected us. I hope I never have to make those kinds of choices. If you're smart and careful and choose the right people to trust, you won't have to." Later that morning, after Tyler had left for school, Vincent received a phone call from Patricia in Denver. Brianna had been released from county jail and was living in a halfway house while serving the remainder of her sentence under supervised probation. She found work cleaning offices at night and had apparently been attending counseling sessions required by her plea agreement. "She asked me to give you a message," Patricia said. "I'm listening. She wants you to know that she understands why you did what you did, and she doesn't blame you for any of it. She says she knows she'll never see Tyler again, and she accepts that. But she wants you to tell him that she loves him and she's sorry for what her choices cost him." Vincent was quiet for a long moment, watching the mountains through his kitchen window. "Anything else?" "She asked me to tell you that she hopes someday you'll find someone who deserves the kind of loyalty you showed her, even after she betrayed it." "Patricia, I need you to give Brianna a message from me." "What is it?" "Tell her that I hope she finds peace with the choices she made, and that her life from this point forward is everything she's capable of making it. But tell her that chapter of my life is closed permanently, and any future contact should go through attorneys." "Vincent, she's broken. Completely broken. What happened to her in jail, what she's lost, I think she finally understands the real cost of what she did." "Understanding the cost doesn't eliminate the debt, Patricia. Some things can't be forgiven, can't be undone, can't be made right with time and good intentions." After hanging up, Vincent walked through his house, really seeing it for the first time in months. Every room had been repainted, refurnished, or renovated to remove any trace of Brianna's presence. The photographs on the walls now showed only Vincent and Tyler. Fishing trips, camping expeditions, moments of genuine happiness between father and son. In his study, Vincent opened a safe hidden behind a bookshelf and removed a thick folder containing documents that officially didn't exist. Inside were new identities for both himself and Tyler, detailed financial records for accounts in 3 countries, and contact information for people who could help them disappear completely if circumstances ever required it. Vincent had learned long ago that peace was not a permanent state, but a temporary condition that required constant vigilance to maintain. He'd built a good life in Colorado, a legitimate life that gave Tyler the chance to grow up without the shadows that had defined Vincent's own youth. But he'd also learned that some people would always choose destruction over construction, betrayal over loyalty, greed over love. The difference now was that Vincent Morrison was no longer the kind of man who could be betrayed without consequences. He was no longer the kind of man who would absorb damage to preserve relationships that had already been poisoned by deception. He was a man who protected what mattered to him with everything he possessed, who eliminated threats before they could destroy the people he loved, who understood that sometimes the price of peace was the willingness to do violence to those who would steal it. As evening approached and Tyler returned from school, Vincent Morrison closed the safe, locked away the tools of his former life, and went to the kitchen to prepare dinner for his son. They would eat together, talk about Tyler's day, maybe watch a movie or work on homework. It would be a normal evening in a normal house, the kind of peaceful domestic scene that Vincent had once thought was impossible for someone with his history. But peace, Vincent had learned, was not something you found. Peace was something you built, something you protected, something you were willing to fight for with everything you had. And Vincent Morrison had fought for his peace and won. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Golden Sun. Mitchell Bennett had always known his brother was a snake. He just hadn't realized how venomous until the day their father collapsed at the country club. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Mitchell was in his workshop, a converted barn on the outskirts of Austin where he restored vintage motorcycles, when his phone buzzed. Not Victor's name on the screen, but the family housekeeper, Dana Saunders. "Mr. Mitchell, your father. He's at St. David's Medical Center. Heart attack." 20 minutes later, Mitchell walked through sterile hospital corridors, his boots still dusty from the road. He found his father, Robert Bennett, propped up in bed, oxygen tubes snaking into his nose. At 73, the patriarch of Bennett Pharmaceuticals looked diminished, his legendary presence reduced to shallow breathing and beeping machines. Victor is already there, of course. Pressed suit, perfect hair, looking every inch the corporate prince. Their father had built a pharmaceutical empire worth $340 million from nothing, started with a single drugstore in Dallas, turned it into a manufacturing and distribution powerhouse. Victor had attached himself to that legacy like a barnacle, working his way up to COO over the past decade. "Mitchell." Victor's greeting was cold. "Surprised you bothered to show." Mitchell ignored him, moving to their father's bedside. "Dad, how you feeling?" Robert's eyes flickered open. For a moment, something passed between father and son. Recognition, maybe relief. "Mitch, good. You came." "Of course I came. Still playing with your toys in that barn?" Victor interjected, checking his Rolex. "Some of us have actual responsibilities. The board needs updates. Suppliers are calling." "Victor." Robert's voice was weak but sharp. "Leave us." Victor's jaw tightened. "Dad, I really should. Now." After Victor left, radiating resentment, Robert gripped Mitchell's hand. "I need to tell you something. The company, Victor's been." A coughing fit interrupted him. Nurses rushed in, and Mitchell was ushered out. He found Victor in the hallway, on his phone. "Yes, Wayne, I understand. Just make sure everything's ready. We discussed this. He saw Mitchell and quickly ended the call. Who's Wayne? Mitchell asked casually. My lawyer. Wayne Byers. Estate planning stuff. You know, grown-up things. Victor smirked. Someone has to think about the future. Estate planning? Dad's not dead, Victor. No, but he's not getting younger. And someone needs to ensure the company's protected. Not that you'd understand. You checked out years ago to play mechanic. Mitchell had left Bennett Pharmaceuticals at 25, 8 years ago. He'd seen how the business changed his brother, watched Victor transform from a merely ambitious kid into something ruthless. Their mother, Marie, had died when Mitchell was 15, breast cancer. She'd been the family's heart. After her death, Robert threw himself into work, and Victor learned to weaponize their father's grief. I'm not a mechanic, Victor. I'm a restoration specialist. I rebuild things that are broken, make them work better than they did before. How touching. A metaphor. Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, smiled. I have calls to make. Real business. You should go back to your grease and gears. Mitchell watched his brother walk away, that perfectly tailored suit, that calculated stride. And he thought, something's very wrong here. Over the next 3 weeks, Mitchell visited his father daily. Robert's condition stabilized, but didn't improve. Congestive heart failure, the doctors said. Months, maybe a year. Robert wanted to come home, spend his remaining time in the mansion where he'd raised his sons, where Marie's gardens still bloomed. Mitchell helped coordinate his father's care, moving into the estate's guest house. It gave him a front-row seat to Victor's behavior, and it was illuminating. Victor was always on the phone with Wayne Byers, always behind closed doors. Documents appeared and disappeared from Robert's study. Once, Mitchell caught Dana, the housekeeper, looking distressed. Everything okay, Dana? She hesitated. She'd worked for the family for 20 years, since Mitchell was 13. It's not my place, Mr. Mitchell. Dana, please. Your brother, he's been having your father sign things. Papers. Mr. Robert isn't always clear, you know. The medication, the fatigue. But Mr. Victor insists, and that lawyer friend of his witnesses everything. Mitchell's instincts prickled. What kind of papers? I don't know. But Mr. Robert seems confused after. Yesterday, he asked me why Victor needed him to sign so many things. He couldn't remember doing it. That night, Mitchell sat in his father's study after everyone had gone to bed. He didn't touch anything, didn't need to yet. He just observed. There was a safe behind the Remington painting, but Mitchell didn't know the combination. On the desk, a leather portfolio embossed with Byers & Associates, attorneys at law. He photographed everything systematically. Business cards, notepads, the slight dust patterns showing which documents had been moved recently. Then he noticed something odd, a prescription bottle, half hidden under papers. Temazepam, sleeping medication. But the prescription wasn't from Robert's regular doctor. Mitchell photographed that too. Chapter 2. Poison Roots. The flashback hit Mitchell hard one morning, triggered by finding an old photo album Dana had unearthed while cleaning. 23 years earlier. Mitchell was 10, Victor was 13. Their mother, Marie, laughed as she pushed Mitchell on the tire swing their father had hung from the ancient oak. Victor sat on the porch, sulking, a book in his lap he wasn't reading. Come join us, Victor, Marie called. I'm studying. Some of us care about our future. Even then, even at 13, Victor had this edge, this need to position himself above everyone else. But Marie saw through it. That evening, Mitchell overheard her talking to Robert. He's struggling, Robert. He feels like he has to be perfect to earn your love. That's ridiculous. I love both my boys equally. You say that, but you light up differently with Mitchell. You share things with him. Your workshop, your stories. Victor sees that. He thinks he has to achieve, to compete, to matter to you. I'll talk to him. But Robert never did. The pharmaceutical business was exploding, demanding more of his time. And then Marie got sick. Mitchell remembered Victor's face at their mother's funeral. 13-year-old Victor, rigid in his black suit, not crying. Just calculating. While Robert sobbed and Mitchell's world shattered, Victor seemed to be taking inventory of what this meant for him. The years that followed proved Mitchell's instinct right. Victor ingratiated himself with their grieving father, became indispensable at the company. By 18, he was interning in every department. By 25, he was VP of Operations. By 30, COO. Mitchell went a different direction. His mother had encouraged his mechanical aptitude, his artistic side. After her death, he threw himself into it, building, creating, fixing. His mother's brother, Uncle Julio Cummins, was a master craftsman who ran a custom motorcycle shop in Houston. Mitchell spent summers there, learning. When Mitchell turned 25, Robert offered him a VP position at Bennett Pharmaceuticals. Victor had been furious. He'd worked for that office for years, and his dropout brother just gets offered a corner office? But Mitchell turned it down. Dad, I appreciate it, but this is Victor's world, not mine. Let me build something myself. Robert had been disappointed, but understanding. Victor had been ecstatic, until he realized Mitchell's rejection somehow made him look worse in their father's eyes. Robert started mentioning Mitchell's independence, his integrity, his self-sufficiency. Every compliment was a dagger in Victor's ego. At least Mitchell built his own success, Robert had said once at a family dinner after Victor bragged about a company acquisition. Didn't need his old man's name to do it. Victor's smile had been frozen on his face. But his eyes, present day. Mitchell closed the album. He understood now. This wasn't just about money or power. This was Victor finally, completely, trying to erase the brother who'd always been their father's favorite without even trying. He needed answers. Real answers. That afternoon, Mitchell drove to Houston to see Uncle Julio. The old man was in his 70s now, still wearing grease-stained overalls, still building motorcycles that people traveled from across the country to buy. Mitchell, good to see you, boy. How's your daddy? Not good, Uncle Jules. That's why I'm here. I need advice. Over beer and tacos, Mitchell explained his suspicions. Julio listened, his weathered face growing serious. You think Victor's manipulating the will? I think he's doing something. Dad's been signing documents he doesn't remember. There's a lawyer involved, Wayne Byers. And Victor's being different, more confident, like he's already won something. Julio was quiet for a moment. Your mama, God rest her, she worried about Victor. She told me once that she was afraid he'd inherited your granddaddy's mean streak. Granddaddy Bennett? Before your time. But Robert's father, your granddaddy Clifford, that man was ruthless. Built the first drugstore through some questionable dealings. Robert spent his whole life trying to be better than his father, building the business legitimately. But Marie worried that streak skipped a generation, landed in Victor. What should I do? What would your mama do? She'd fight, but she'd fight smart. She'd protect what matters, the truth, family, justice. Julio gripped Mitchell's shoulder. You're more like her than anyone. You got her heart and her spine. Use both. Mitchell drove back to Austin with new resolve. He needed evidence. Hard evidence. Chapter 3. The Last Goodbye. Robert Bennett died on a Friday night, 6 weeks after his initial heart attack. Mitchell had been reading to him The Count of Monte Cristo, Robert's favorite. They'd just reached the part where Edmond Dantes discovers the treasure when Robert's breathing changed. Mitch, listen. Dad, save your strength. No, listen. Robert's grip was surprisingly strong. I changed my will. Made sure you'd be taken care of. Protected. Victor doesn't know everything. I left instructions. With Leonard. Leonard? Leonard who, Dad? But Robert's eyes were closing. The truth is in the safe. Your mother's birthday, backwards. Within an hour, Robert Bennett was gone. Victor arrived 20 minutes later, tearful, dramatic. Oh God, Dad. No, no. He buried his face in his hands, but Mitchell noticed his brother's eyes were dry. The funeral was elaborate. Victor spared no expense, inviting board members, business partners, politicians. He gave a eulogy, painting himself as the devoted son who dedicated his life to their father's legacy. Mitchell spoke too, briefly. He talked about the man who'd taught him to ride a bike, who'd built models with him, who'd encouraged his independence, even when it disappointed him. When Mitchell mentioned their mother, how Robert had never stopped loving Marie, how he kept a rose garden thriving for 18 years, that's when people cried. Victor's jaw clenched through the entire speech. The week between the funeral and the will reading was tense. Mitchell stayed at the estate, supposedly to help settle affairs. Really, he was investigating. His father's safe. His mother's birthday backwards. Marie Bennett was born March 15th, 1952. Backwards, 2591513. Mitchell waited until Victor was at the office, then tried the combination. The safe opened. Inside, financial records, property deeds, and a sealed envelope addressed to Leonard Kincaid, attorney at law. Not Wayne Byers. Someone else. Mitchell photographed everything in the safe. There were documents showing Victor's extravagant spending. Company funds used for personal expenses, backdoor deals with suppliers, creative accounting. And there was a will, dated 2 years ago, leaving the company divided equally between both sons, with trust provisions and oversight. But there was also a handwritten note from Robert, dated just 3 months ago. If anything happens to me, and Victor contests this arrangement, Leonard has instructions. I've made provisions. The truth will out. Mitchell, you were always the better son, though you never needed to prove it. That's why you were better. Protect what I built. Your mother would be proud. Dad. Mitchell's hands shook as he photographed the note. That evening, Victor came home jubilant. Tomorrow's the big day. The will reading. Are you prepared to finally grow up and enter the real world, little brother? What do you mean? I mean, Dad left instructions. About your future. About the company. It's time you took some responsibility. Victor's smile was shark-like. Wayne will explain everything tomorrow. Mitchell played dumb. Wayne Byers? Why would Dad's lawyer be? Because I made sure he is. Dad was confused at the end, Mitch. You saw it. The medication, the decline. He needed guidance. Wayne provided it. Victor poured himself a scotch, confident. Don't worry. There'll be a place for you. Maybe facilities management. Something appropriate to your skill set. That night, Mitchell didn't sleep. He sat in his workshop, reviewing everything he'd found. Then he made calls. First to Leonard Kincaid's law office. Closed, but he left a message. Then to his uncle Julio. Then to someone else. Someone from his past he'd sworn never to contact again. Tasha Travis answered on the third ring. Mitchell Bennett. I told you never to call me unless it was life or death. It is. I need your help, Tash. Tasha had been Mitchell's girlfriend in college, before she'd gone to law school, and then into the FBI's white-collar crime division. They'd ended things amicably. She was married now, had kids, but she'd once told him if he ever needed help, really needed it, she'd remember what he'd done for her family. Mitchell's mechanical expertise wasn't just for motorcycles. He'd once helped Tasha's father, a whistleblower being harassed by his corporate employer, by uncovering planted evidence in his company car, a tracking device and drugs. Mitchell's technical knowledge had saved her father from prison. Tell me everything, Tasha said. Mitchell did. For 2 hours, he explained his suspicions, showed her the photos, the documents, everything. Tasha listened, asked questions, took notes. This is fraud, Mitchell. Potentially elder abuse, document forgery, possibly more. But I need to be careful. I'm FBI, but I can't just launch an investigation based on family suspicions. I need probable cause. What if I can get you that? Then I listen. But Mitchell, if your brother has done what you think he's done, and if this lawyer is complicit, they're not going to go down easy. They'll have covered their tracks. Let them think they have. I'm good at finding what people hide. Your mother's son, Tasha said quietly. Okay, record the will reading if you can. Give me every detail. We'll go from there. The next morning, Mitchell dressed carefully. Not his usual jeans and work boots, but slacks and a button-down. He wanted to look unremarkable, unthreatening. He set his phone to record audio, hidden in his jacket pocket. At 10 a.m., he walked into the conference room at Byers & Associates. Wayne Byers was exactly what Mitchell expected. 50s expensive suit, slick back hair, practiced sympathy. Victor sat at the table, barely containing his smugness. Mr. Bennett, please sit down. Wayne gestured to a chair. I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you. Now let's proceed. Your father's will is quite clear, though I must warn you, some of the provisions may be surprising. Mitchell said nothing. He watched Victor, who couldn't quite hide his excitement. Wayne opened a leather folder. Robert Bennett's last will and testament, dated 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks. Right after Robert's heart attack, when he'd been medicated, vulnerable, leaves the entirety of Bennett Pharmaceuticals, including all assets, properties, and holdings, valued at approximately $340 million, to his eldest son, Victor Bennett. Victor's smile was nuclear. Wayne continued. To his younger son, Mitchell Bennett, he leaves personal effects only. No financial inheritance. No company stake. No property rights. Mitchell felt the words land, but he kept his expression neutral. Let them think they'd won. Furthermore, Wayne's voice took on an edge. Robert Bennett specifically requested that Mitchell Bennett be denied access to his mother's gravesite, which is located on private family property that now belongs to Victor. That one hit different. Mitchell's composure cracked for just a second. His mother's grave. The rose garden she'd loved. Victor saw it and leaned forward. Sorry, little brother. Dad's wishes. You understand. Mitchell stood up slowly, every eye in the room fixed on him. Wayne looked nervous. Victor looked triumphant. Victor, Mitchell said calmly. Check your email. What? Your email. Check it. Now. Victor pulled out his phone, annoyed. What is this, some kind of... His face went white. What? What is it? Wayne leaned over. Mitchell watched them both read the email he'd sent at 9:59 a.m., 1 minute before this meeting. The email containing photographs of the forged will, evidence of the medications used to make Robert compliant, Wayne Byers' financial records showing a $2 million payment from Victor, Victor's embezzlement documentation, audio recordings, thanks to Dana, who'd been paying attention, of Victor and Wayne discussing the plan, and CC'd on the email, Leonard Kincaid, the FBI's white-collar crime division, the Texas State Bar Association, and every member of the Bennett Pharmaceuticals Board of Directors. This isn't possible, Victor whispered. You're nobody. You fix motorcycles. You're wrong again, Victor. I fix things that are broken. And I'm very good at it. Wayne Byers was already on his feet. This is a misunderstanding. Those documents are fabricated. The conference room door opened. Tasha Travis walked in, her FBI badge visible, 2 agents behind her. Wayne Byers? Victor Bennett? We have warrants for your arrest. Chapter 4. The House of Cards. The FBI arrested Victor and Wayne in the law office, which seemed poetically appropriate to Mitchell. Agents were already searching Wayne Byers' premises, boxing up documents, seizing computers. Victor's phone rang constantly. Board members, executives, news outlets. He didn't answer any of them. You can't do this. Victor screamed as they cuffed him. I'm the CEO of a major pharmaceutical company. My lawyers will. Your lawyer's being arrested alongside you, Tasha said dryly, for conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, and forgery. That's just the start. Mitchell, please. I'm your brother. You're really going to. You try to steal Mom's grave, Victor. That answered every question I had about who you really are. Mitchell watched them lead his brother away. He felt no satisfaction, just a hollow sense of duty completed. His phone immediately started buzzing. Leonard Kincaid, his father's actual attorney. Mr. Bennett? Leonard Kincaid. I've been trying to reach you. Your father left very specific instructions with me. And given the situation, we need to meet immediately. They met at Leonard's office in downtown Austin, a modest but dignified space. Leonard was in his 60s, kind-eyed, clearly shaken by the day's events. Your father suspected Victor was planning something. He couldn't prove it, but he knew. So he did 2 things. First, he created a decoy will that Wayne could help him modify. Let Victor think he was succeeding. Second, he filed the real will with me, his original attorney, with instructions to activate it only under specific circumstances. Leonard pulled out a document. This is your father's true last will and testament, signed, witnessed, and notarized 2 years ago, before his illness. He updated it 3 months ago with a codicil. Mitchell read it. The company was divided, 51% to Mitchell, 49% to be held in a trust for Victor, if Victor remained in the company and proved his value over 5 years. If Victor engaged in any illegal activity, his share would go to a foundation in their mother's name. But why the charade? Mitchell asked. Why let Victor think he could get away with it? Your father's note explains. Leonard handed over an envelope. Mitchell opened it, saw his father's familiar handwriting. Mitchell, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm guessing your brother showed his true colors. I'm sorry. I failed you both by not seeing this coming, by not being the father you each needed. Victor became what he is partly because I made him compete for love he always had. You became who you were despite that same neglect. I'm proud of you, son. But I couldn't leave the company to Victor alone. He'd destroy it, and he'd destroy himself. This way, if he tried something crooked, he'd eliminate himself. You're reading this, so he did. The company is yours now. Build something better. Make your mother proud. Love, Dad. Mitchell sat back, processing. His father had set a trap for Victor, knowing his eldest son would take the bait. There's more, Leonard said gently. Your father left you additional assets. The estate, obviously. His personal accounts. Some properties you didn't know about. There's also a trust he set up in your mother's name. He's been funding cancer research for 18 years, anonymously. He wants you to continue that. The next week was a whirlwind. The story broke nationally. Pharmaceutical heir arrested in inheritance fraud. Victor's face was everywhere, and not in the way he'd always wanted. Mitchell had to deal with the board of directors, who were in chaos. The COO arrested, the CEO dead, the company in headlines for all the wrong reasons. An emergency meeting was called. The conference room at Bennett Pharmaceuticals headquarters was imposing, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Austin, a table that could seat 30. Mitchell had never been in this room before. Now he sat at its head. Board members filled the seats. Josh Mann, CFO, Rodney Sawyer, head of manufacturing, Peter McDaniel, chief counsel, others Mitchell recognized from company events but had never formally met. Gentlemen, ladies, Mitchell began. I know this is unprecedented. I've never worked here, and now I'm majority owner. But my father believed in this company, in what it could be. I'm not Victor. I don't have corporate experience. But I have something he never had, integrity and the ability to build things that last. With respect, Mr. Bennett, Josh Mann said carefully, the company needs experienced leadership. Perhaps a management team, or we could give me 6 months. See what happens. If I'm terrible, I'll step aside and hire someone better. But I'm asking for a chance to honor my father's legacy properly. There was silence. Then Peter McDaniel, the chief counsel, a man in his 70s who'd known Robert for decades, spoke. I worked with your father for 37 years. Robert told me once that you were the one who inherited his actual values, not just his ambition. I think we should give Mitchell his chance. 6 months. We guide him, we teach him, but we trust his judgment. He looked around the table. All in favor? One by one, hands rose. Mitchell had a company to save. Chapter 5, Revelations. The deeper Mitchell dug into Bennett Pharmaceuticals' operations, the more rot he found. Victor hadn't just planned to steal the inheritance. He'd been systematically looting the company for years. Josh Mann, the CFO, walked Mitchell through it. He was clever. Nothing obviously illegal, but morally questionable. Premium suppliers who kicked back funds. Overpriced contracts with companies he had hidden stakes in. It's not technically embezzlement, but it's close. How much? Over 5 years? We estimate Victor siphoned off about $8 million. Mitchell's jaw tightened. That explains his lifestyle. Why didn't anyone stop him? Your father was dying. Victor had power of attorney. We raised concerns, but Josh shrugged helplessly. He was the boss's son. The full picture emerged over days. Victor had been positioning himself not just to inherit, but to strip the company bare afterward. He'd been negotiating a sale to a private equity firm, Barrett Holdings, run by Derek McBride, a notorious corporate raider. Victor would have pocketed $340 million from the inheritance, then another $50 million from selling the company. Barrett Holdings would have dismantled Bennett Pharmaceuticals, sold the pieces, and destroyed everything Robert Bennett built. We need to fix this, Mitchell told his management team. All of it. Renegotiate those supplier contracts. Audit every department. And we're not selling to anyone. But there were complications. Victor, even arrested, still had allies. His lawyer, not Wayne Byers, who'd already been disbarred, but a new one, a shark named Jerome Robbins, was fighting the charges. More concerning, someone was leaking information to the press, spinning the story to make Mitchell look like an opportunistic younger brother who'd betrayed his own family. Anonymous sources say Mitchell Bennett schemed to frame his brother and steal the company. One headline read, "Family Betrayal. Did Mitchell Bennett fabricate evidence?" Mitchell knew Victor's playbook. When losing, change the narrative. Make yourself the victim. Then things got worse. Dana Saunders, the housekeeper who'd helped Mitchell, who'd recorded Victor and Wayne discussing their scheme. She was attacked. Someone broke in her home, ransacked it, clearly looking for something. Dana was hospitalized with a concussion and broken arm. Mitchell visited her at the hospital. "I'm so sorry, Dana. This is my fault." "No, Mr. Mitchell. This is your brother's fault. He's a bad man. Always has been. Your mama knew it." Dana squeezed his hand with her good one. "But you finish this. Don't let him win by scaring you." Mitchell hired security for Dana and began investigating the attack. The police were treating it as a burglary, but Mitchell knew better. This was intimidation. He needed answers. He needed to know who was still working for Victor. Chapter 6. The investigation deepens. Mitchell approached Tasha Travis at the FBI. "Someone attacked my witness. Someone's leaking information. Victor's in jail, but he's still pulling strings." Tasha reviewed her files. Victor made bail, $5 million, posted by an anonymous donor. He's under house arrest at his mansion, ankle monitor, but he's not isolated. He's making calls, receiving visitors. Who posted bail? We're working on that. But Mitchell, you need to be careful. If Victor feels cornered, he might do something desperate. Mitchell had an idea. "Can you give me a warrant to search his mansion?" "On what grounds?" "The attack on Dana. If Victor ordered it, there might be evidence, communications, financial transfers, something." It took 2 days, but Tasha got the warrant. Mitchell accompanied the FBI to Victor's mansion. The sprawling estate Victor had bought with embezzled funds, though proving that was another matter. Victor was there, ankle monitor visible, smug despite everything. "Little brother, come to gloat. Come to find the truth. Search all you want. You won't find anything." But they did. In Victor's office, hidden in a safe behind a bookshelf, they found documents. Contracts with Barrett Holdings detailing the planned sale. Financial records showing payments to Wayne Byers and to someone else. A name Mitchell didn't recognize. Tommy A. Bear. "Who's Tommy A. Bear?" Mitchell asked. Victor's composure cracked. Just for a second, but Mitchell saw it. Tasha looked it up. Private investigator. Retired cop. Questionable reputation. Known for doing dirty work for wealthy clients. Did Victor hire him to attack Dana? They found the evidence on Victor's laptop, which was seized. Encrypted emails, but the FBI's cyber unit cracked them. Victor had hired Tommy A. Bear to recover documentation from Dana's home. The attack was premeditated. Additional charges were filed. Conspiracy to commit assault, witness intimidation, obstruction of justice. Victor's bail was revoked. He went back to jail, and this time, there was no anonymous donor to rescue him. But the investigation revealed something else. Tommy A. Bear had been Victor's fixer for years. The emails went back 18 months, detailing various jobs, surveillance on business rivals, intimidation of whistleblowers, even sabotaging a competitor's facility. Victor's been running his own criminal enterprise, Tasha told Mitchell, using company resources to fund illegal activities. And then came the bombshell. Among Tommy Hebert's files, they found something that changed everything. Surveillance footage from the night Robert Bennett had his initial heart attack at the country club. In the video, Victor was visible in the background, talking to a man, a doctor from the club's medical staff, Dr. Lewis Gibbs. They were animated, arguing. Then, minutes later, Robert collapsed. "We need to interview this doctor," Tasha said. Dr. Lewis Gibbs was brought in for questioning. At first, he denied everything. But faced with the footage and the possibility of being charged as an accessory, he broke down. "Victor paid me $50,000. He said his father had a heart condition, that it was just a matter of time. He wanted me to accelerate things. I gave Robert a medication that would stress his heart. I didn't think it would actually..." Tears streamed down his face. "I'm a doctor. I took an oath. but I had gambling debts, and Victor said he'd ruin me if I didn't help. Mitchell sat in the FBI observation room, listening to the confession, and felt his world tilt. Victor hadn't just tried to steal the inheritance. He'd killed their father to get it. "We're charging him with murder," Tasha said quietly. "Premeditated. First degree." Mitchell walked out of the FBI office into the Austin heat, the late afternoon sun brutal and unforgiving. His brother was a murderer, the man who'd shared a childhood, who'd been at their mother's funeral, who'd eaten at the same family dinners. He'd killed their father for money. Mitchell's phone rang. Leonard Kincaid. "Mitchell, I need to see you. There's something else your father left you. Something I was instructed to give you only if Victor's true nature was revealed." "What is it?" "A video. Your father recorded a week before he died. You need to see it." Chapter 7. The Final Testament. Leonard Kincaid's office felt like a confessional. Mitchell sat alone in the conference room. The lights dimmed as the attorney set up the video. "Your father asked me to show you this only if Victor was charged with a serious crime. He hoped he was wrong about his son. He wasn't." The screen flickered, and there was Robert Bennett, thinner than Mitchell remembered, oxygen tubes still visible, but his eyes clear. Alert. This had been recorded after the heart attack, but during a lucid moment. "Mitch, if you're watching this, then Victor has done something terrible. I hoped I was wrong. God, I hoped I was wrong. But a father knows his son, and I've watched Victor become something I don't recognize." Robert coughed, collected himself. "I need to tell you the truth about your mother. About Victor. About everything. Marie didn't just die of cancer, son. She fought it for 2 years, and she was winning. Then she took a sudden turn. The doctors were puzzled. Her blood work was improving, then suddenly crashed. They called it aggressive progression. But Marie, in her last days, she told me something. She said Victor had been giving her special smoothies, helping with her medications. She thought she was imagining things, that the painkillers were making her paranoid, but she was worried. I dismissed it. Victor was 15. My son. He couldn't." Mitchell's blood ran cold. "After she died, I found empty pill bottles in Victor's room. Marie's pain medication. He'd been taking them. I thought maybe experimenting, being a stupid teenager. But when I confronted him, he said he was helping Mom sleep better. I chose to believe him. I chose to be blind." Robert's face was anguished on screen. "Over the years, I've watched Victor manipulate, scheme, hurt people to get ahead. And I've wondered. I've asked myself the question I was too afraid to ask when Marie died. Did my son kill his mother? I don't have proof. I'll never have proof. But Mitch, I think he did. I think even then, at 15, Victor was so twisted with jealousy and anger that he poisoned her. She stood between him and my undivided attention. And he removed her. Mitchell couldn't breathe. I failed you both. I created Victor by making love conditional, by making everything a competition. And I failed Marie by not protecting her. I'm telling you this because you need to understand. Victor is capable of anything. He's not just greedy or ambitious. There's something missing in him, something that should make us human. And I'm so sorry you have to deal with this burden. But you're strong enough. You're your mother's son. You can do what I couldn't, stop him. Completely. Forever." The video ended. Leonard Kincaid sat down across from Mitchell. "I didn't know what was on that video. Your father sealed it. Should I turn this over to the FBI?" "Yes. Do it now." Mitchell's voice was hollow. "They need to investigate my mother's death." "Mitchell, that was 18 years ago. The evidence will be gone. They might not be able to. They investigated anyway. Victor needs to answer for what he did. All of it." That evening, Mitchell sat in his workshop, surrounded by half-finished motorcycles, and let himself feel everything. Grief for his mother, for what Victor had taken from them all, rage at the years of lies, and a cold, crystallizing determination. Victor had killed their mother, killed their father, destroyed countless lives pursuing money and power. And Mitchell was going to ensure he paid for every single crime. But the law moved slowly, and Victor's new legal team, expensive, aggressive, was already building a defense. The murder charge regarding Robert was solid, thanks to Dr. Gibbs's testimony. But Marie's death? 18 years old, cremated, no physical evidence? The DA told Mitchell it would be nearly impossible to prosecute. We can reopen the investigation, the DA explained. But without evidence, without witnesses who remember specific details, it's circumstantial at best. Victor's lawyers filed motion after motion. Character witnesses who swore Victor was a devoted son. Experts who argued Dr. Gibbs was unreliable, that he'd fabricated the story to reduce his own culpability. Media interviews where Victor, from jail, painted himself as a victim of his jealous brother's scheme. Mitchell Bennett couldn't compete in the business world, so he fabricated evidence to steal what was rightfully mine, Victor said in one interview, managing to look both sympathetic and dignified in prison scrubs. I love my father. I love my brother. This is a tragedy of family betrayal. People believed him, or enough people did. Social media split into camps. Hashtag Team Victor versus hashtag Team Mitchell. True crime podcasters dissected every detail. The company's stock price fluctuated with every new development. Mitchell was losing the court of public opinion, even as the legal case against Victor strengthened. Then Dana Saunders remembered something. Chapter 8. The Smoking Gun. Dana called Mitchell late one night, excited. Mr. Mitchell, I remembered something. About your mother. About Victor. What is it, Dana? I started working for your family when you were 13. Victor was 16. Mrs. Marie was already sick, but stable. I remember because Victor was so attentive to her, bringing her food, her medications. Everyone thought it was sweet. But one day I was cleaning Victor's bathroom, and I found bottles. Empty bottles. Medication bottles with Mrs. Marie's name, but they were in Victor's trash, hidden under other garbage. Do you remember what medications? One was that chemotherapy drug she was taking. I remember because the label said take only as prescribed, do not exceed dosage. But the bottle was empty 2 weeks early. I asked Victor about it, and he said his mother had dropped the bottle and spilled pills down the sink, but she was embarrassed, so she asked him to hide the evidence so your father wouldn't worry. Mitchell's pulse raced. Did you believe him? At the time, yes. He seemed genuinely concerned. But now, Mr. Mitchell, what if he was giving her too much? Overdosing her on her own medication to make the cancer seem worse. It was brilliant and horrific. Not poison that would show up in an autopsy, but her own chemotherapy drugs, given in excessive doses. It would look like disease progression, not murder. But it would require detailed planning, careful manipulation, and absolute coldness. All things Victor possessed. Dana, this is crucial. Would you testify to this? If it helps, yes. Absolutely. Mitchell contacted the DA, who brought in a forensic pharmacologist. Dr. Cecilia Schroeder reviewed Marie Bennett's medical records, which Robert had kept meticulously. This is fascinating, Dr. Schroeder said, studying charts. Marie's cancer was responding well to treatment. Then, over a 6-week period, her blood work deteriorates rapidly. Her oncologist noted it was unusual. Patients don't typically crash this fast when they've been improving. It's almost as if she was being overdosed on her own medication. Mitchell suggested. Dr. Schroeder looked up sharply. Yes, exactly that. If someone was giving her additional doses, it would explain the sudden decline. The chemotherapy would essentially poison her system faster than the cancer could. Could you prove that in court? With the medical records and testimony from someone who witnessed the defendant controlling her medication? Yes, I could testify that this pattern is consistent with deliberate overdose. The DA reopened Marie Bennett's case officially. Victor's legal team fought it, but the evidence was mounting. Dana's testimony, the medical analysis, Robert's video, it painted a damning picture. But Victor had one more card to play. His legal team announced they'd found a witness, Derek McBride, the private equity CEO who'd been planning to buy Bennett Pharmaceuticals. He claimed Mitchell had approached him months before Robert's death, discussing the sale, planning the takeover. It was a lie. Mitchell had never met McBride before finding those documents, but it was a calculated lie designed to muddy the waters. If this witness testifies, Tasha told Mitchell, it creates doubt. Makes you look complicit, like maybe you and Victor were both scheming, and you just betrayed him first. But it's not true. Truth and proof are different things. McBride's a respected businessman. His word carries weight. Mitchell needed to discredit McBride. He thought about his father's words. You fix things that are broken. What was broken here? The lie. So fix it. Expose it. He called his uncle Julio. I need to find out everything about Derek McBride. Every skeleton, every dirty deal, everything. On it, Julio said. His uncle still had connections in the business world, people who owed him favors. Within 48 hours, Julio had answers. McBride's company is under SEC investigation. Insider trading. He's desperate for a big acquisition to distract from it. If Victor promised him Bennett Pharmaceuticals, he'd do anything to help Victor, including perjury. Mitchell took this to Tasha. Check McBride's financial records. I bet you'll find payment from Victor. They did. $500,000 transferred from Victor to a shell company owned by McBride, dated 2 days before McBride agreed to testify. We've got him, Tasha said grimly. Witness tampering, bribery, perjury. Derek McBride was arrested before he could testify. His lies fell apart under questioning. He admitted Victor had paid him to fabricate the story, hoping to create reasonable doubt. Victor's defense collapsed. Chapter 9. Victory and Legacy. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Mitchell attended every day, sitting behind the prosecution, watching his brother's downfall. The evidence was overwhelming. Dr. Gibbs testified about Robert's murder. Dana testified about Marie's suspicious death. Dr. Schroeder provided expert testimony about the medication overdoses. The FBI presented emails, financial records, recordings. Tommy A. Bear, the fixer, took a plea deal and testified about Victor's various crimes, including the attack on Dana. Victor's lawyers tried everything. Character witnesses, expert testimony claiming police misconduct, suggesting Mitchell had planted evidence. But the jury saw through it. On the witness stand, Victor maintained his innocence, but his arrogance betrayed him. When the prosecutor asked why he'd try to take Mitchell's mother's grave away, Victor sneered, because sentimental attachment is weakness. My father built an empire. Mitchell builds toys. I deserve that empire. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. 2 counts of first-degree murder, Marie and Robert Bennett. Conspiracy, fraud, embezzlement, witness intimidation, assault. The list went on. Sentencing came a month later. The judge, a stern woman named Naomi Boyle, showed no mercy. Victor Bennett, you have demonstrated a complete absence of human decency. You murdered your mother when you were 15 years old, a crime so heinous it defies comprehension. You murdered your father for money. You attempted to destroy your brother, who by all accounts is the only decent person in your family. You have shown no remorse, no understanding of the harm you've caused. You are a predator who deserves to be removed from society permanently. Life in prison without possibility of parole for each murder, sentences to run consecutively, plus 30 years for the additional crimes. You will die in prison, Mr. Bennett, and that is justice. Victor's face was ashen as they led him away. He looked at Mitchell one last time. No smirk, no clever comment. Just rage and disbelief that he'd lost. Mitchell felt no triumph, just exhaustion and relief. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Mitchell made a brief statement. Justice has been served for my mother and father. Victor Bennett will spend the rest of his life paying for his crimes. My focus now is on honoring my parents' legacy, running Bennett Pharmaceuticals with integrity, continuing my mother's cancer research foundation, and ensuring that something good comes from this tragedy. Thank you. The months that followed were about rebuilding. Mitchell restructured the company, fired the executives who'd enabled Victor's corruption, promoted people based on merit. Bennett Pharmaceuticals' reputation slowly recovered. He expanded the Cancer Research Foundation, making it public, naming it the Marie Bennett Foundation for Cancer Research. The first major donation, $10 million from his personal inheritance. He also did something unexpected. He reached out to Wayne Byers' family. The corrupt lawyer had been sentenced to 20 years, but he had a wife and teenage daughter who'd lost everything. Mitchell offered them help, not money, but connections, job opportunities. He couldn't save Byers, but he could help the innocent people caught in the blast radius. Why? Byers' wife, Kelly Gentry Byers, asked when they met. Because my mother would have, Mitchell said simply. She believed in helping people, even when they didn't deserve it. Especially then. On the anniversary of his father's death, Mitchell visited the family estate. The rose garden his father had maintained for 18 years was overgrown. No one had tended it during the chaos. Mitchell spent the day there, pruning, weeding, replanting, making it beautiful again. His phone rang. Uncle Julio. How you doing, kid? Better. I think. Still processing. Your mama would be proud of you. You know that, right? You didn't just beat Victor. You stayed decent while doing it. That's the hard part. Mitchell looked at the roses, blooming despite neglect. I've been thinking about what Dad said, that he created Victor by making him compete for love. But he gave me something better. He gave me the freedom to be myself. I think that's what I want to do with the company. Make it a place where people don't have to destroy each other to succeed. That's a good legacy, Mitch. Better than money. After the call, Mitchell sat by his mother's grave. The headstone read, Marie Bennett, beloved wife and mother. Her love remains. I got him, Mom, Mitchell said quietly. Victor can't hurt anyone else. And I'm going to make Dad's company into something you'd both be proud of. I promise. The wind rustled through the roses, and Mitchell chose to believe it was his mother's approval. 6 months later, Bennett Pharmaceuticals announced a breakthrough, a new cancer treatment developed by researchers funded by the Marie Bennett Foundation, showing unprecedented results in early trials. The press release mentioned that the company's CEO, Mitchell Bennett, would ensure the drug would be